Guys, welcome to Eradication Talk. This is my second episode, and I know I said I was wanting to do like an episode every week, but some things ended up coming up and I had to deal with them. But the point is, I'm back and I'm super glad to be here. So this episode, though, I'm really wanting to kind of take a focus still towards mental health, mental illnesses, and such, and I want to focus that like on stigmas. I take a deep breath whenever I talk about this because I know that there are many stigmas to mental health, and it's one of those things that I know that I'm not the only one who is affected by them, and it's something that I would like to bring a stop to. Ultimately, I would really enjoy being able to actually stop the stigmas from happening, stop the discrimination. So why am I talking about this? Well, I have done a lot of thinking over just the past 10 years of my life, and really putting together all of my experiences, there's certain things that I've started noticing, and one of them was how differently I was treated in the workplace due to my mental illnesses. The fact that I was so emotional, and so I'm going to get into that. But before I go any further, I would like to go ahead and issue my trigger warning. There might be mentions of sexual harassment and such, and so this is a trigger warning. If you are triggered by anything discrimination-wise, sexual abuse, anything like that, just be forewarned, there might be a mention here and there of that. So I feel incredibly passionate about this because I remember when I first noticed that I was being treated differently because of my mental illnesses. My very first bank job let me go due to quote-unquote personality differences, when the issues were actually so much deeper than that. I was sexually harassed by the security guard who was also local law enforcement, and so when I reported it, I was actually called in to the office to be told not to be sexually enticing. I wore professional attire to work every day, which included sometimes pencil skirts, but these skirts weren't short, they went down to my knees. I don't see how I was being sexually enticing. After that, I just decided to ignore the security guard, but within 2 weeks, I was let go over quote-unquote personality differences because I was having panic attacks anytime that I was left alone with the security guard. There were just moments of sexual harassment that had happened, beforehand. I had literally past traumas due to sexual abuse. And so I had ended up developing post-traumatic stress disorder due to my past traumas. So anytime that certain things would happen to me, it would kind of cause me to regress. It would cause me to go back into these periods of times in my life when I experienced this, and it would trigger my anxiety to the point that I might have acted out, but I don't think I did. But the thing is that I was also super open about my anxiety, and it wasn't like I didn't announce that I was, having an anxiety attack. My second experience that I want to highlight, just because it still sticks with me and it was the most recent. I was working for a small Oklahoma-based restaurant diner chain when I was labeled as quote-unquote emotional because of my emotional outbursts when I was under stress, which were effects from my post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I say I was labeled because the owner of this establishment later was contacted as a reference for me, and he told the new employer that I was quote-unquote very emotional. Like it was a bad thing. The new employer told me what my past employer said, which is how I know what was said, And I knew exactly what he was referring to because there were two moments when I worked for that previous employer that I had broken down into tears. One time it was like whenever the owner wasn't in the establishment, and I had gotten into a small heated argument with one of the corporate guys who was training everybody. And you know what I did? I worked through it. Now, the second time that this happened, that I had my emotional outburst, was because I honestly don't even remember why it was. I think it was because I was just so tired. Or maybe it was because I had been triggered by something. I honestly just don't remember. But I do remember being sent home because of this. I remember being just called back there into the office and saying, we have enough people today, so you can go ahead and go home. I was fine at this point. Like, I wasn't crying anymore. As a matter of fact, them sending me home made me cry more. Like, that definitely wasn't helpful at all. Now, while I'm on this topic, because I also like to make sure to add like positive, remarks about people whenever I am super critical, I would like to point out that I did have one amazing employer in 2019, 2020 that was the most understanding when it came to mental illness, and not just for me, but for everyone. Due to my NDA, I can't name them, but I will say that they are a tech giant, and I will always have great things to say about working for them because they've had amazing programs, amazing discounts. They just really took care of their employees, and I super appreciated that, like them for that, because I had never, ever, ever seen a company care so much about their employees like this one did. Now, I want to take a moment just for everyone to think. Think to yourself, have you ever been discriminated against due to your mental illness? Have you ever witnessed it being like pointed towards somebody else and you just witnessed it? I mean, like, there's so many different ways that we could be experiencing discrimination and stereotypes and stigmas just because of mental illness. And the thing is that most of us probably wouldn't even realize it because, well, we've been trained not to pay attention to it. We've been trained that, we shouldn't talk about our emotions. We've been trained not to bring that into the workplace. Whatever happens at home stays at home. Once you walk through the door, then you don't bring that here. But sometimes it's easier said than done. And whenever you struggle from mental illness, like it doesn't work the way that we think it's going to work. So, how does this hurt society? How do mental illness stigmas hurt society? Well, more than half of people with mental illness choose not to receive help. Why? Because they fear of being shamed. They fear losing their jobs. They even fear losing their livelihood. And I get that. I totally get that because I learned after that second employer that I shared with you guys that I had, after that, I learned, you know what? My mental illness isn't anyone's business but my own. Now, and I realized that not everybody has the same sort of understanding of mental illness as others do. And that's kind of where it all goes wrong. People just have the wrong idea. People don't understand. They don't get it. They're just like, oh, well, then, like, just stop being scared. Like, why are you anxious? Well, don't be scared about that. Like, that's irrelevant or that's irrational. Like, that's what? It doesn't work like that in somebody's mind who has this mental illness. So discrimination against people with mental illness can be subtle or obvious. I mean, it can be as subtle as just like all right, you gotta go home because you're crying too much. Or it can be as obvious as being passed over for a promotion because you're emotional. I'm kind of calling somebody out there, but that's okay. um, and the sad part about it though is that whenever we have these mental illnesses and we suffer these stereotypes and these stigmas, people eventually are forced to lose their jobs, quit their jobs, etc. Their reputations end up becoming tarnished because the prior jobs give references that are like, they're too emotional, they don't know how not to cry, they don't perform well under pressure, whenever that's not even actually the case. The case is that they do perform great at their jobs. At times, they just have problems handling the influx of emotions. And you know what? People shouldn't be penalized for that. People shouldn't be shamed for having emotions. People shouldn't have to worry that they're being criticized because they have emotions or trauma, past trauma. Like at this point in life, who doesn't? At this point in life, who doesn't have trauma? I can almost guarantee you that all of these people who are pointing fingers at the people with mental illness are probably just as fucked up in their head than like the next guy. Seriously though, think about it. How many narcissistic assholes do you come across every day that clearly need their own set of help because they just make you feel like less of a person. They make you feel like less of a human being, and you can tell it's because they have their own problems. But of course, they haven't come to terms with it yet. So what are we gonna do? Well, we're getting to that. But first, let me read you guys this little piece of information. A 2016 study on stigmas concluded there is no country, society, or culture where people with mental illness have the same societal value as people without mental illness. Need I say any more than that? We've got to change this. Like this is such a problem that I don't understand why it's such a problem. I don't understand it. Like, everybody needs mental help. Everybody has mental illnesses, I'm pretty sure. Like, if you took the person, like probably the most healthiest person, like mentally healthy, and you sat them down with a psychiatrist to be evaluated mentally or psychologically, I can guarantee you they probably have at least one mental illness. Or at least that psychiatrist will diagnose them with at least one. You guys know narcissistic tendencies or narcissistic personality is like one of the biggest red flags that say, hey, I need help. And I'm laughing about it though, because I have so much experience with narcissistic personalities. And sadly, I know that most of you guys do too. But anyways, so what do these stigmas even look like? Like, what do we need to look out for? I am glad you asked. I mean, I asked myself, but. So there's three different types of stigmas. We have the public stigma, the self-stigma, and the institutional stigma. The public stigma is basically negative attitudes that others have about mental illness. Self-stigma is negative attitudes or internalized shame about your own condition, like your own mental illness. And then there's institutional stigma, which is more systemic. It involves policies of government or private organizations that intentionally or unintentionally limit opportunities for people with mental illness. Like the institutional stigmas, that's where it's really crazy because we have this thing called like equal opportunity employers, at least in the USA we do. It's a joke. I'm just saying that now. It's a total joke. But let's move on. Here's some examples of what stereotypes and prejudices look like under each of these types of stigmas. For public stigma, a good example will be, quote unquote, people with mental illness are dangerous, incompetent, to blame for their disorder, unpredictable, and so on. It'll sound pretty much like that. People or self-stigmas is whenever you see somebody who does have a mental illness and they're like, I am dangerous, I'm incompetent, I'm the person to blame for my anxiety. I'm the one who put myself in this position. And then you have institutional stereotypes and prejudices. We have stereotypes are embodied in laws and other institutions, basically saying that stereotypes are fact. What? If anyone knows anything, that's not true. Stereotypes are what people wish were facts, I guess, because a society formed this opinion, this like vision of a specific type of person. Not fact. And then there are examples of discrimination. Now, I know, are we really gonna call people out for discrimination? Yes, I am. And you know why? Because I'm tired of being quiet about it. I'm so tired of it. But here we go. So discrimination, for a public stigma discrimination example, quote, therefore, employers may not hire them. Landlords may not rent to them. The healthcare system may offer a lower standard of care. Unquote. Can we just take a moment? If you have a mental illness, and if you have ever been hospitalized for your mental illness before, I want you to take a moment and just think about it. Did you receive any like different care than if you went to the ER for like a regular, issue that you normally go to? Like, say you break your arm, right? Go to the ER. They give you pain medication, they make sure that you're comfortable, they, ask you if there's anything they can do to help you, blah, 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 blah. Okay, eventually you're released, you're gonna get surgery, blah, 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 you're all set up. Okay, now, I've been hospitalized 3 times. And I'm not ashamed of it because I knew that I needed the help each time. And I learned valuable things each time. Every single time that I went into the hospital, I was made to feel like I was wrong for wanting to get the help that I wanted to get. But I didn't know what else to do. What do you do when you call the suicide hotline and they tell you that you need to call 911 so you can get help, but you can't because you know that that's just going to make you feel worse? It sucks, and I've been there. And every time that I had gone to the ER to receive mental help, they always made me feel like a criminal. Tell me, how is treating me like a criminal when I'm having a mental breakdown going to help my mental case at all? It's not. It's going to make me want to die even more. So that is such a bewildering example of discrimination from the public, like from a public stigma point of view, because that's exactly how it goes, sadly. Moving on, we have self-stigma discrimination, and These thoughts lead to lowered self-esteem and self-efficacy. And so it's generally whenever a person is like, why try? Someone like me is not worthy of good health. Like, why should I even try to get better whenever it's not like I have the support from like the people around me anyways? Like it's just like that. And that's the type of self-talk that puts you up for failure. Which is why again we need to stop with these damn stigmas. Like if the public wasn't so stigmatizing to people with mental illnesses, then people would probably actually receive the help that they needed. And then lastly, and again, it's another bomb dropper. Our institutional example for discrimination is intended and unintended loss of opportunity. Wow, that sounds familiar. Loss of opportunity. Man, I distinctly remember being passed up for a promotion because I was too emotional. But yet, that was the only thing that they had to say against me because I was a damn good worker. I was the one that people always asked, okay, Sharissa, what do I do next? What do we need to work on next so we can get out of here on time? And you know what? People always asked me when I was working. Why? Because I was able to delegate duties. I was able to delegate responsibilities. I was able to ensure that people were all staying busy. And yet I still got passed over for a promotion before. And I can't even describe, like, I picked up so many extra shifts for this place. I worked myself hard and I was shamed. I was passed over. You know why? Small town Oklahoma. But we'll stop at that because before I go any deeper. So what can we do? What can we do to change this? Here. I'm just going to go through a list of things, and I might add a couple, but we can talk openly about mental health, such as on social media. Be open about it, like talk about it. Don't be afraid of it. Be factual. Talk about it. Be open about it, but just don't stop talking about it. Because if we stop talking about it, then people aren't going to take it seriously anymore, and they're going to be like, oh, guess it wasn't that important. That's just people who are mentally ill being incompetent, like I just said, like earlier on about stereotypes. It's horrible. Educate yourself and others. Respond to the misperceptions or negative comments by sharing facts and experiences. If you see someone saying like people with depression should just kill themselves, I don't know why I said that, but it's just like the first thing that I can remember someone saying to me. Respond to that. I mean, even if you have to be a little crass, like, what in the hell do you mean by that? Because I like to think that people with depression are the most creative because they have so much going on in their heads. I'm sure they could write a damn good story. I wrote some of my best work was written when I was depressed. I mean, need I say more? Be conscious of language. Remind people that words do matter. The verbiage, the vocabulary, the words that you actually use when you're talking about this stuff actually matters. If you say, oh, people out here mentally ill and they're just all a bunch of crazies, like, well, you're not wrong, but still, crazies is not a really good word to use. As a matter of fact, don't even refer to people who have mental illness as mentally ill because, like, again, it can have negative connotations, sadly, and also thankfully to society and how fucked up it is today. Encourage equality between the physical and mental illnesses. You have to draw comparisons to how they would treat someone with cancer or diabetes. I mean, someone with cancer, like, people are so much more empathetic to. They're like, oh my gosh, this disease is so horrible on you. I feel so bad. Showered with pity and love and support. But yet somebody who has crippling depression gets shamed into believing that they're wrong for feeling the way that they feel. Show compassion for those with mental illness. Like, you should have the, like, almost like, I don't even understand. Like, do you want people to, like, to struggle with anxiety? Like, do you want people to be constantly afraid due to their traumas? No, I don't. I wouldn't wish anxiety on anybody. And so, yeah, like, I would be hella compassionate to people because they deserve it. Everybody deserves a little compassion. Everybody. We're in the middle of a goddamn pandemic for for the past year and a half, and here we are just out here making people feel like shit because they have anxiety. Whatever. Not really whatever. We're gonna put a stop to this shit. Be honest about treatment. Normalize mental health treatment just like other healthcare treatment. We need to normalize mental health days. We need to normalize self-care. Sorry. Self-care days. Okay? Self-care is so critical. I mean, it's literally the equivalent as if you came down with the flu and you needed to take a couple of days so you could get better. It's the equivalent of that. Sometimes our brains just need some breaks, and longer than just an extra 10-minute break. Sometimes we need like 2 days. We need to be able to use sick time for mental health. And some jobs don't allow that. In order to use sick time, you have to bring back a doctor's note. And I think that's pretty ridiculous. Let the media know when they are using stigmatizing language, presenting stories of mental illness in a stigmatizing way. I've seen it a few times with local news stations in Oklahoma that they tend to use not the best words in their articles or even in their news segments. It's very kind of like disrespectful in a way. It is disrespectful, and it's just not how no wonder people don't want to be in Oklahoma. Y'all treat people like shit. Choose empowerment over shame. I will fight stigma by choosing to live an empowered life. To me, that means owning my life and my story and refusing to allow others to dictate how I view myself or how I feel about myself. Like, you have to fight the stigma. You have to make your opinion known, and you have to be out there and say, I don't stand for this. You shouldn't either. It's one of those things. Like, we have to stick together whenever we're dealing with society, because, in society, it's a group of people, more than one person. And it takes more than just one person standing up and saying, hey, this is wrong. This shouldn't be happening. No. But if there's a group of people who are willing to stand up together and be like, hey, stop it. That's not okay. Quit acting like that. Quit doing this. You're not giving these people a fair chance. And even if it means that a whole bunch of us who are mentally ill have to get together and rise and make a scene, then holy hell, we will do that. And I'm serious because something has to change. Something has to give for this. It's not okay. This has to change. And it's one of those things that I just really feel like, as a person who has struggled with mental illness, like I've dealt with this for way too long. I've dealt with being treated differently for probably 10 years, like as far as I've known, like that actually matters. Ever since I've been an adult, ever since the beginning of my adult life, I can remember being treated differently in the workplace and in society. Whenever I went through my divorce, I was treated horribly. I was treated like the worst person in the world because I was mentally ill, because I was diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder. I was legally, professionally diagnosed with these things, and I was made to believe that I was a horrible mother because of it. No, I wasn't a horrible mother, and I still stand by that to this day. And it baffles me. I do acknowledge that there are moms out there who they needed the help. Like, they need help. I'm not saying that because you have mental illness, like, you don't need help. No. That is not what I'm saying at all. I am saying that we shouldn't label people just based off of the fact that they have mental illness or a mental illness, whatever. Like, the whole point of this is to normalize getting help for it. We need to normalize that we all need to learn how to deal with these things. Even if you don't have a mental illness, it's important to learn coping mechanisms, coping skills, positive self-talk, daily affirmations, setting goals, making a safety plan. These things are all important for everybody. You don't have to have anxiety. You don't have to be depressed. These are critical skills that we will all use at different points in our life. And that's why it's so important to me. Because this is something that if everybody learned it together collectively, we can all support each other. We can all use each other as a support system. We can all learn that, oh my God, we can understand other people better, because guess what? We educated ourselves. Now we understand that's why this person is acting like this. They're not just an asshole. They have issues, and we can help them fix these damn issues. You get what I'm saying? Anyways, I thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to me. And I know I'm probably a little hard to listen to. I tend to get off topic sometimes, and I'm a little uncensored, but I like that about myself. I like being honest, and I like being gritty, and I like to point out when things are wrong that are happening in the world. Like, it's not okay to act like this. It's not okay to to just beat around the bush like this. Like, no, it's time. I think it is time that we make changes, If you or a loved one, if you or a loved one struggles from mental illness and needs some venting space, make sure you check out eradicationwellness.com and check out the virtual support group. All you have to do is just scroll all the way down. Once you type in eradicationwellness.com, you will go immediately to the home page. If you scroll all the way down, you will find more information about the virtual support group along with a sign-up sheet. The virtual support groups are scheduled to happen every Wednesday night from 8 p.m. Central Standard Time to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. In order for there to be a support group, people are required to sign up, so that way I can make sure to make time to actually do it. Otherwise, I don't see a reason for me to do it and get on there and not have anyone show up. You don't even have to put your real name on the signups. All you have to do is just at least put in your email, so that way you can get the reminders and you can add it to your Google Calendar. That way you don't miss a beat. Also, feel free to let me know what you want me to talk about. I'm always looking for different topics. At this moment in time, I'm probably going to do about 2 more mental health focused episodes, and then we'll start moving on to things like conspiracy theories and things that we just really don't hear talked about that often. Probably for a good reason, but it's eradication talk, so what do you expect? Anyways, if you're also interested in being a guest in my podcast, send me an email at eradicationent@gmail.com. Make sure to put in the topic line that you are interested in eradication talk. Anyways, thank you guys so much again for listening, and I really hope that you guys continue to tune in.